What would you do if one night you lost everything? Your home, your money, your sense of security, and the only place you could shield your child from the world was a filthy public restroom? Most people would give up. Most people would let despair swallow them whole. But Chris Gardner was not like most people. In the face of utter hopelessness, he refused to surrender. He held his sleeping son tightly in his arms, curled up on the cold, tiled floor of a train station bathroom. That night, he made a silent promise to himself. He would not let this be the end of their story. Instead, he would transform his darkest hour into a legacy of triumph. Chris Gardner, a name now synonymous with determination and the relentless pursuit of happiness. His journey from desperate hardship to financial success inspired millions, not just through his real-life achievements, but also through the powerful film, The Pursuit of Happyness. But Chris Gardner is more than just a stockbroker or a character in a movie. He is living proof that no circumstance is too dire, no challenge too great, for someone who refuses to let go of their dreams. Born in 1954 in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, Chris Gardner's early life was a far cry from the boardrooms and skyscrapers he would one day inhabit. His father abandoned the family, leaving Chris's mother to raise him and his siblings alone. She was the rock of his world, but she too was trapped in a cycle of poverty and violence, often the victim of abuse at the hands of men who came and went. For Chris, childhood was a relentless struggle. Never enough food, never enough warmth, never enough peace. Nights were filled with hunger and fear. But even as a young boy, Chris harbored a flicker of hope deep inside. He dreamed of breaking free from the chains of his past. He dreamed of becoming the kind of father he himself had never known. A father who would always be there no matter what. As Chris grew into adulthood, the shadows of his childhood hardship followed him. He worked hard, driven by the desire to build a better life. Yet, the odds were stacked against him. He found work selling portable bone density scanners, an advanced, if not particularly marketable, piece of medical equipment. Day after day, Chris trudged from clinic to clinic, trying to convince doctors to buy a machine they didn't really need. The pay was meager, the rejections endless. Every sale was a battle, and often there simply wasn't enough money to cover rent or groceries. The strain took its toll at home. Chris's wife, weighed down by years of struggle and disappointment, eventually walked out, leaving him alone with their young son. Suddenly, Chris was not just a struggling salesman. He was a single father, responsible for every aspect of his child's well-being, all while debts mounted and prospects faded. But sometimes destiny reveals itself in the most unexpected ways. One afternoon, as Chris walked down a busy San Francisco street, he spotted a gleaming red Ferrari. The sight stopped him in his tracks. He couldn't help but approach the man behind the wheel and ask, "What do you do for a living?" The answer was simple. "I'm a stockbroker." In that moment, something clicked inside of Chris Gardner. Here was a path he had never considered, a career that seemed reserved for the privileged and well-educated. He had no college degree, no experience, no connections. But he had something far more valuable: unwavering belief in his own potential. With nothing left to lose, Chris set his sights on a new future. He applied for an unpaid internship at the prestigious brokerage firm Dean Witter Reynolds. The position offered no salary, no guarantees, just a slim chance at something better. By day, Chris juggled endless phone calls, learning the ropes of the stock market. By night, he and his son drifted from one shelter to the next, sometimes sleeping in homeless centers, sometimes huddled in public restrooms when no other options remained. There were nights when Chris had to shield his little boy not just from the cold, but from the shame and despair that threatened to overwhelm them both. Every morning, Chris forced himself to rise with the sun, determined to make the most of each day. He refused to let his hardships define him. Instead, he focused on what he could control: his attitude, his effort, his determination. He became relentless in his pursuit of clients, making hundreds of calls each day, always with a smile, always with hope. He worked harder than anyone else in the program, knowing that only one intern would win a coveted full-time position. For 6 months, Chris and his son lived on the edge of survival. There were times when it seemed impossible to go on. But Chris drew strength from his love for his child and the promise he'd made in that train station bathroom. He would not fail. He would not let his son down. He would prove that a man's worth is measured not by his circumstances, but by his resolve. At the end of the internship, the decision was made. Out of dozens of candidates, only one would be offered a job. That person was Chris Gardner. In that instant, everything changed. The years of struggle and sacrifice had not been in vain. Chris seized the opportunity with both hands, quickly establishing himself as one of the firm's top brokers. He worked tirelessly, learning, growing, and building relationships. His clients trusted him, drawn to his sincerity and his iron will. By 1987, Chris Gardner had amassed enough experience and confidence to strike out on his own. He founded Gardner Rich & Company, a brokerage firm built from the ground up, often from a tiny apartment with nothing but a desk and a telephone. But Chris's perseverance paid off. Over time, he grew his business and his reputation, eventually achieving the financial security he had once only dreamed of. The boy who had slept in shelters was now a self-made millionaire. But perhaps Chris Gardner's most enduring legacy is not his wealth, but his story. His journey from homelessness to success captured the world's attention, inspiring millions to believe that anything is possible with enough courage and determination. In 2006, his life was immortalized in the film The Pursuit of Happyness, starring Will Smith and Jaden Smith, a movie that brought audiences to tears and rekindled hope in hearts across the globe. Chris Gardner's message is a simple one, yet profoundly powerful. Never let anyone tell you that you can't achieve your dreams. Protect your aspirations fiercely, no matter the obstacles. If Chris Gardner could rise from a public restroom floor to the heights of business success, so can you. Your circumstances do not define your future. Your choices do. So, take a moment to reflect on your own dreams. What is it that you most desire? What obstacles stand in your way? Remember Chris's journey, and let it fuel your determination. Share your biggest dream, and spread this story to someone who needs a little hope today. Because happiness, true happiness, belongs to those who never give up.